Good evening, hello and welcome. You're tuned into Times Now. This is Breaking Ground and I'm Poonam Burde. And the story we're tracking at this hour is a massive headache and a security concern for India to its south. Now, despite serious concerns that have been raised by India, Sri Lanka has allowed the Chinese spy ship to dock at the Hambantota port. This is the Times Now exclusive news break that we're getting for you. And these visuals on your screens are of that Chinese spy ship which has docked now at the Hambantota port. Now, this is a satellite tracking vessel, in fact, which arrived at the Hambantota port this morning. Times Now has accessed these exclusive visuals for you. Sri Lanka's foreign ministry has said that the ship will be allowed to remain in port until the 22nd of August. Now, these visuals that you see on your screens are that of the vessel that has been the bone of contention between the two countries for several weeks now. Why is it in the news, and why did India and United States want Sri Lanka to not allow this particular spy ship into its port? Well, this is a third-generation scientific research ship. It is a highly powerful spy vessel that is capable of significant aerial reach, reportedly around 750 kilometers. This means that several ports in Kerala, Tamil Nadu and other areas on India's border can be on radar. It is capable of conducting satellite control and space tracking as well. Now, India's concerns mainly have been for security reasons, and the biggest concern is that it can spy on Indian military establishment. It can be used for space and satellite tracking and can detect any intercontinental ballistic missile launches as well. Now, China maintains that it is docking there for refueling purposes, but India and the United States have raised multiple concerns on the timing of this particular docking.
Yuan-1-5 has reached Sri Lanka, Hambantota port, and there had been a small controversy and it has been all settled. And the government has given permission for this to berth in Hambantota port. It's a peaceful mission. They have come for replenishment. And I was glad that I was able to represent His Excellency the President to welcome the ship and give a small speech. So I think this type of visit will strengthen further the bond, consolidate our friendship between China and Sri Lanka. So China has been a very long-lasting friend for us.
Arrival of Yuan-5, the Chinese ship that is modernized, equipped for the sake of the world's development and prosperity, is finally in our waters. This is proof that we still maintain our sovereignty in spite of all the pressures exerted by powerful countries, and we are glad that we are able to hoist our flags together for peace in the Indian Ocean and for the sovereignty of our two countries and our friendship.
Now, there have been several flip-flops from Sri Lanka on permission for this particular ship after India's objections following apprehensions that it could spy on New Delhi's military installations. The Lankan Foreign Ministry actually requested the Chinese embassy last week to postpone this vessel's visit, but that hasn't happened. It did dock this morning. It is going to be there for another 5 days until the 22nd of this month, and the concerns that have been raised by India have also been echoed by United States as well. Joining me on this broadcast is Captain Alok Bansal, Director of India Foundation. Jehan Pereira, also Executive Director, National Peace Council of Sri Lanka, joins me on this broadcast. And Mr. Pereira, I'd like to begin with you. Several concerns have been raised by India, by the United States as well, about allowing this Chinese vessel to dock there for 5 long days. India is someone who Sri Lanka has been calling their big brother, especially since the time of the crisis that we've seen in the last couple of months, in terms of humanitarian aid, in terms of financial aid that has been given by India. So then, despite the concerns, and legitimate ones at that, that were raised by India diplomatically, why were they not paid heed to?
I understand India's concerns because this ship is a very special ship. It's a spy ship. But I think that this particular visit is not for the purpose of actually spying on India, but for the purpose of China making a statement that it also can come into Sri Lanka, that it has a port in Sri Lanka and that it can come in. And it has been very tough on Sri Lanka, I believe, from what I have read, in making this point and insisting that the ship should come in. Now, Sri Lanka did try very hard to assuage India's concerns by asking the ship not to come, to delay entry into Sri Lanka. I think the lesson from this for us is that Sri Lanka has to be supported to try and maintain a non-aligned or neutral foreign policy, a policy that doesn't take any one side. I think the Chinese are trying to affirm, and in a way put pressure on Sri Lanka to take the Chinese side. India and the US are trying to get Sri Lanka to follow the Indian or US, take their side. We can't take a side. We are too small. We are in too difficult an economic situation to take a side, to try and to antagonize any one of these big powers whose assistance we need at this time and which we are too small to really challenge. So I think that is the idea that I would like to put forward, that India also, we understand India's concern. India's security concerns must be uppermost. I think the Sri Lankans must accept that. Indian security concerns have to be uppermost. But at the same time, and we can't take one country's side, one big power's side. We have to, in a way, balance all these countries and survive in this very...
Sure, I understand that you have to maintain that balancing act as far as both India and China are concerned. But the fact that China has claimed India's objections to be morally irresponsible and India trying to, fish in troubled waters and try to create trouble in the neighborhood, with Sri Lanka actually giving the opportunity to China to do what they want, haven't you given credence to what China has been saying against India?
No, I think that Chinese allegation is not correct. It's not correct. I think India has a genuine concern. This is a very special Chinese ship that's coming in. It's a warship. It's a spy ship. And India has every right to criticize China for forcing its way into Sri Lanka. But at the same time, Sri Lanka, has had to let China come in. And I think that the point is that we have to try and be concerned about India's security concerns. At the same time, we can't say no to China.
Right, you can't say no to China. Well, the kind of investments that China has done is also something that perhaps is solely responsible for the kind of economic crisis that Sri Lanka has seen, especially in the last couple of months. Are you just not sinking further into this Chinese debt trap?
Yeah, we have to be very careful about that. I mean, the Chinese aid to Sri Lanka has come in a double-edged way. It has caused us to get further into the debt trap. But of course, if you look at the figures, it is not only the Chinese aid that has caused this problem or the Chinese loans that have caused the problem. Chinese loans are particularly bad because they have been kind of very irresponsibly used by the Sri Lankans in cooperation with the Chinese, and that's unfortunate. But we do want China to invest more in our country economically. We need Chinese resources. China is a very big and rich country. We also need Indian resources. We need Indian support. And we have to be careful not to get into debt traps. And the biggest part of the debt trap, from what I understand, is the commercial loans we have taken from Western sources, commercial to private corporations and private institutions. That's the biggest problem we are facing right now.
Right. Right, stay on with me. Captain Alok Bansal also joins us on this broadcast. And Captain Bansal, Mr. Pereira, in fact, going on to say that they have to maintain a balancing act between the two countries. They can't really choose, even though India's concerns are legitimate. So where does that leave ties with India and Sri Lanka? Because we've been not only raising legitimate concerns, but we've also maintained the role of the big brother as far as humanitarian aid, as far as financial aid is concerned, out of a little effort that lifted Sri Lanka out of the economic crisis that they have been facing, the worst in decades.
See, there is no doubt that we have been in the forefront of ameliorating Sri Lanka's sufferings. But we need to understand that Rajapakses had actually sold out Hambantota port virtually to Chinese, who invoked sovereign guarantees and are operating now Hambantota port. Since they are operating, they have that right, they have managed to enter the ship. And as Jehan Pereira rightly said, that Sri Lanka is too small a fry to break off relations with China at this point of time when they need help from every direction, every country. So that is one of the issues, I think, which has actually prevented Sri Lanka but they should have been cognizant of India's concerns and should have to prevent the ship from entering, though it is operated and built by the Chinese.
Right. Right. Now, as far as the optics and the relations between India and Sri Lanka is also concerned, now just yesterday, just a few hours before this Chinese spy vessel was to dock at Hambantota, India gifted a Dornier aircraft to Sri Lanka. How do you see that?
See, that was a very positive step. India has been trying to build up Sri Lanka's maritime capabilities all through the decades.
Right.
India has built up Sri Lanka's capabilities, and that's been our attempt and surveillance capabilities to a very great extent. But this ship is beyond security concerns. I think it's more to do with Sri Lanka's economic dependence on external powers today, and the fact that sovereign guarantees were invoked by China for the loans.
Right. India, of course, hoped that China would not give this, Sri Lanka, I beg your pardon, would not give this Chinese vessel a permission to dock, but that unfortunately hasn't happened. What the fallout of this is, that of course remains to be seen. But I thank you both gentlemen for joining us here on this broadcast with your perspective.